You do not bring glory to God if you're out here being promiscuous. You do not bring glory to God if you're out here being promiscuous. You may be trying to serve God, you may be trying to bring glory to God, but you're not bringing glory to God if you're out here being promiscuous. Because other people, when they see that, they can see that, that doesn't bring glory to God, right? If you're out here being promiscuous and you're trying to bring glory to God, you cannot bring glory to God if you're being promiscuous because you may be a person of God, but you're bringing, you're serving the devil's agenda. When you're out here being promiscuous, you're supposed to be a child of God. You can be a child of God serving the devil's agenda. Again, you could be a child of God serving the devil's agenda. If you're married and you have a girlfriend and you're being promiscuous with other women, so you may be a child of God, but if you're sleeping around with other women and you're being promiscuous, guess what? You're serving the devil's agenda. So most people are a child of God serving the devil's agenda. We're not talking about sin. We're not talking about things you need to be forgiven for. We're not talking about that. We're just sin in general. We're talking about when you're being promiscuous. Because we all fall short. We all sin. And none of us are perfect, okay? We're talking about the person that's out here being promiscuous. We all fall short of the glory of God. We all fall short of the glory of God. This is about the people that are out there being promiscuous, knowing they're in a committed God-ordained relationship. That does not bring glory to God. And it can cause many to stumble and fall. We want to set an example of faithfulness. God has put us together to set example of faithfulness. He's put us together to set example to show righteousness forth in the earth. If you're out here being promiscuous as a God ordained spouse, you are not showing God's glory, or you're not showing for the righteousness for your relationship and God's glory in the earth. You know, you can cause many to stumble, and you can cause many to say, well, he's a man of God, he's a pastor, he's a minister, he's doing it. So that's why most of the congregation sometimes are seeming to always backslide and do this and do that because their pastor is promiscuous, their pastor isn't right, their ministers aren't right, and they're finding out, well, pastor did it, the ministers are doing it. I can backslide, I can do this. They're in there. It's not about all the time what you say is what you do. If you're preaching, don't do it, but they know you're doing it, you're still teaching them to do it. It's not always about what you say, it's what you do. So if you're showing them you're doing this and everybody gossiping about it and finding out that you're sleeping around in the church, and don't be surprised if, your people that are under you start, men that are under you start being promiscuous, you know. So it's not so much, oh, you're preaching, God said we shouldn't do this, God said we shouldn't do that. So when you do that as a pastor, minister, the head of a church, you cause many to stumble. You cause many to fall. And this is why we need to be corrected in this area. God has put these God-ordained relationships together to show righteousness in the earth, to show for righteousness in the earth. Okay, to show people an example. For people to build and, to help nations and to help people, to help the people that God has called them to help, whether you're in the fashion industry, animals, helping people. God has placed these God-ordained spouses together to do something for other people, not just for themselves. You have a calling, you have a purpose. It's not just about you and them. Usually, if it's about you and them, that's a superficial relationship. If it sounds superficial, seems superficial, most likely it is superficial. So God has called us to these relationships to show for righteousness in the earth. When you're a pastor or minister of some kind, even if you're not behind a pulpit, if God's called you on the streets to minister, if God's called you to minister to women, minister to women. When you be promiscuous, you cause men to stumble. They will look at you and say, oh, that's a great man of God. Even if you're a minister on the street, they'll say, oh, that's a great man of God. He does it, why can't I? And some of these people are not saved, so they're more likely to slip into it. And by you being their example that, hey, it's okay to do it because you were doing it as a minister of the faith and they're not even saved, then you are showing them even more how to be unrighteous. Okay? You know, you see what I'm saying? And that is why God This is why God needs us to show forth righteousness in here. He needs us to. This is why men, women in the church, men and women alike, spouses need to stop being promiscuous with people. We're called to show for righteousness. We're called to be an example. But we're not the example. We cause men to stumble. There may be somebody who's not saved and they're trying to follow you. You're the example. I've heard that he fell. I heard that he stumbled. He's a minister of the faith. You don't always have to be a minister of the faith in church. Hey, he's a great man of God. I look up to him. If he can do it, hey, I can stumble too. And if you're being faithful, oh, you know what, that great man of God been through it all, temptation, women always around him, always trying to have sex with him. That man always got somebody trying to be with him. But you know what? That man is faithful. I don't want to follow him. You see the difference? That is why God is calling us. God is not calling us to constantly be promiscuous. He's not calling us to constantly have sex with different women as a minister of God and as a spouse at man. He's not calling us to do all of these things and stuff like that. He's calling us. My ministry is to show righteousness and faithfulness in the earth about romantic relationships where God has put two people together. This is why I'm making these videos because my content is all about showing righteousness and faithfulness in the earth. So most of the content I make will be centered around marriages, relationships, and helping people to show for righteousness in the earth because the devil is out to get marriages and relationships and to steal, kill, and destroy. So now I have to come in and God has sent me, so that I can get on here and teach people, hey, this is not the way. But ministers of the faith, whether you preach the gospel outside, pass out flyers, everybody's called is not the same. People are called to different things. You may be called to dance in the ministry. You may be called to pass out flyers. You may not even be called to speak to people directly. You may be called to send emails. You may be called to do YouTube videos. You may be called to different areas, okay? You don't know what area most of the time you're called to, but you're a minister. And if somebody looks up to you and they find out that you're slipping, especially if it's word around that you're promiscuous and you're a minister, then those people under you who look up to you, guess what? Most likely you're going to cause them to stumble and fall. We have been called as spouses to show God's righteousness forth in the earth. We have been called as ministers to show God's righteousness in the earth. We can't do that. We can't bring the glory of God if we're constantly promiscuous. We may be a child of God, but we're bringing glory to the devil's agenda. We may be a child of God, but we are bringing glory to the devil. And we are going along with the devil's agenda. Beloved, that is not God. Okay, we're not called to do that. This is why we must stay faithful in our relationships. This is why we must stay faithful in our marriages, okay?